It's been nearly 7 years since we discovered that Sam had a severe addiction problem, and wow, what a journey we've been on. The roller coaster ride has been extraordinary, and I've gotten better and better through the years of even in that roller coaster up and down ride so that I could actually get off the roller coaster. And one of the things that I learned along the way was, when Sam went into his first rehab, it was euphoric. And we thought, okay, he's in rehab, we're on our way. And then 2 weeks later, he was kicked out. And then, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? And then months later, he was back in rehab again. And then he was kicked out. And so we went through this up and down, in and out of rehabs. When he finally had, drug court program that he did for a year, and he did so well, and all that went along with that was dashed. The day that he graduated, he and his buddy took meth in order to celebrate. So what I learned as the years went on was patience, and that if he actually was gonna live through this, every time he went into rehab, he got better. He learned a lesson. He picked up some sense of dropping the pain and trauma of his childhood. Every single time was, even if it was overnight, it was a step in the right direction. And so I began to realize that I needed to calm myself. And this was going to be the journey of his recovery. I wasn't going to allow myself to be all over the place emotionally in reaction all the time. And so one of the lessons that I learned was this is just the journey. He's going to go into rehab. He's going to come out of rehab. He's going to get kicked out of rehab. He's going to go to another rehab. And also the statistics are from NIH, the National Institutes of Health, is that it on average takes 5 to 6 rehabs before recovery begins to take place. I didn't know that when we first started this. And so I learned that I needed to skill up and learn more about this disease for my own sanity's sake. And I learned that my sanity was mission critical, not only for myself, but for his recovery. Every time he came out, I loved him the same way that I loved him when he relapsed, with boundaries. He knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, no matter what the journey was for him, in and out of rehabs, in and out of rehabs, in and out of rehabs, that I was going to be constant in my love for him. And I learned how to be able to hold the space for him no matter what his journey was. I loved him no matter what was happening. And I made that clear to him. And I personally learned how to love without expectation, without judgment, without shame, without stigma. I personally was talking to people that I felt like I can trust about my journey. I was not going to let the shame and the stigma and the judgment keep me captive. And so I learned to drop that. I learned what shame really is. Shame is thinking that you're.
So what I've learned is that shame really truly means that we're a bad person. And that is simply not true.
And that is simply not true. I wasn't a bad person because I had a son that was dealing with substance use disorder. I was a great mom who had a son who was dealing with substance use disorder. I was a loving mom that had a son who was dealing with substance use disorder. And I needed to learn, and I chose to learn how to love him in the midst of his disease, in the midst of his unfolding, in the midst of the possibility that he might lose his life to this disease. I learned that it was mission critical for me to be curious, to be empathetic, to continue to deliver the message of love with boundaries, with boundaries, with boundaries, so I could keep my sanity. And I've learned every time. The last time learned, this was about a year and a half ago, a little bit less, a little bit more, that he was in fact relapsed and now it was fentanyl. And so I had a moment where I took a breath. It's actually a bunch of breaths. And I settled into, okay, what do I know to be true? We could lose him. We could not lose him. And I needed to skill up more. So I grabbed a couple of books off my shelf and leaned into Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now and Byron Katie's Loving What Is. And I got myself centered and I got myself calmed because there was nothing that I could do that was going to change the trajectory of Sam's journey. And so what I also learned was, how could I hold the space and love him so deeply in the midst of the worry of what if? And here's the big one. I learned that the worry of what if was so destructive and detrimental to me that it was important that I let it go. I didn't want to give any energy to the what if. I wanted to give energy and vision and possibility, energy that Sam would live and thrive and have learned from his experience that would serve in the years to come. And in fact, what I learned was my own life's purpose was wrapped up in learning how to navigate this journey in a thriving, healthy way. And so what I learned was, one of the major gifts that came out of Sam's disease was the meaning that I attached to it and the purpose that I found. So there's all these possibilities. Who are you going to be in the midst of the roller coaster ride? The ups, the downs, the rehabs, the relapses, all that swirls around this. Learning to love with boundaries, learning to find your own sense of peace and calm in the midst of the storm of addiction, learning possibly that you have a calling in this. Lots of lessons learned, lots of gifts received. And that's what I learned, was that even in the midst of arguably what is one of the most horrific and horrible and desperate situations, watching my son in such pain and agony, I learned that I could still do that without having to take on the pain and agony. I could still do that while I had a thriving life. What are the lessons that you're going to take away from this? What are the gifts and opportunities of learning, stretching, growing that you're going to take away from this? I encourage you to ask yourself these questions. And in this season, when things are so up, as we head into Thanksgiving and Christmas. Please learn the gift and the lessons of being the calm in the storm, loving with boundaries. And I send you my peace and my love and my calm in the midst of the holidays. Take care, everybody.